Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode. My name is Harpreet Singh and we have a very special guest today. And I'm so much excited because if you have been watching me in my recent videos, most of my guests, the experts, were from United States, from California, from New York and other parts of states. And one of the reasons I'm also looking forward to our episode today is because the guest we have today is from Ontario, Canada. She is an expert in negotiating and she's been helping others in the art of negotiation. Recently, she has written a book, Say Less, Get More. I have got the digital copy from my local library and it's an amazing book. I have learned like so many ideas are there. Idea of taking a pause, idea of authority, let the authority works, time pressure. And that's what we're going to learn today as well. So please help me in welcoming Fotini Iconomopoulos. Fotini, thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me, Harpreet, and thank you for getting the name pronounced correctly.
I practice it. I literally practiced like at least for an hour or 90 minutes for that surname.
It is a bit of a challenge for some folks, so I appreciate the effort.
No, I really just wanted to say it right in the interview. So, Fotini, my first question is like very important question is that whenever we ask someone like, hey, like, are you interested in negotiating or learning about negotiating? Many of our responses would be like, I'm not in business of getting or buying houses, real estate, and like buying a car. So they won't bother. And I'm including myself as well. Like before coming to Canada, like I never bothered to learn more about negotiating skills. So please help me in understanding like what is a negotiation and does it only matters in those businesses, like the sales and networking and marketing?
Well, I think you know the answer to this, but anybody watching can benefit from hearing the fact that negotiation, when you go to the dictionary definition, negotiation is two people trying to reach an agreement. It's not two people fighting. It's not two people beating each other up. Really, it's all a form of communication. And so most people do have the attitude you mentioned of, well, I'm not in the sales world, or I'm not in boardrooms, or I don't sell cars or houses, so I don't negotiate. But the fact is, you are trying to reach agreements all the time with people in your life, at work and at home, whether you're on a public transit and you are negotiating for space so people don't crush you. You are having a negotiation without even saying a word. If you have people at home who you have disagreements with, and I think that is everybody, you are having negotiations with them. If you spend time around children, you are definitely having a negotiation. And for those of us at work, yes, there's a lot of negotiating when it comes to salary negotiations and things like that, but you are negotiating personal boundaries. You are negotiating your stress levels. You are negotiating, your progression in your career. You're negotiating with bullies who are trying to impose their ways on you. So yes, absolutely, it happens everywhere. And it is a life skill. It's a communication skill. If we were in agreement, we wouldn't have to have a negotiation. So life would be a lot quieter if we weren't having these constant negotiations.
Amazing. You think like it's happened everywhere, even at house and work culture. But could you tell me like three main reasons on why should we even try to understand and try to learn more about negotiating skills? Like why should someone start improving their negotiating skills?
Yeah, I mean, the number one reason is you are using it every day. So the easy answer is you're throwing money down the drain when you don't. If you are not calling up your telecom company and negotiating a better deal, you're throwing money away. If you aren't negotiating for, when you are getting your car serviced or something delivered or whatever it is, that is money that just disappears through your fingers. There was a study done that looked at people who negotiated their first salary coming out of work. This is way back in 2003. And what they found was only 7% of women negotiated their first salary, whereas 57% of men did. So even men weren't all the way there. Another study took that data a step further and they went, okay, let's compare. Let's compare the person who did negotiate and the person who didn't negotiate. Let's give them the same salary increases and the same promotions for the next 35 years. So that person who did negotiate and that person who didn't, the only difference they have was that first single negotiation. And the average difference in that negotiation was a 7.4% increase. So you might go, okay, 7.4% in one negotiation at the beginning of my career, big deal. But what the study found was when they did that comparison, that person who did negotiate now gets to retire 8 years earlier. So that's one negotiation. That's just your first salary negotiation. How many of those have I had in my lifetime? I've been working since I was 12 for other people. I've been negotiating every single job I've had, every promotion. So imagine how many more years that is. Then you think about the negotiations you have with your partner. Are you just going to go along with the person you live with, whether it's your parents, your spouse, your children? Are you just going to be okay with everything that they say? Now with, we're recording this with the holidays coming up, and I can guarantee there's a lot of folks who are negotiating about where are we going to spend the holidays? What are we going to do for our vacations? Are you going to just be okay with whatever somebody else says? So that is now learning how to advocate for yourself. So advocating for yourself is a skill that you are using daily, and hopefully you want to use even more. I mean, and as I said before, it's about negotiating also personal boundaries. How do you understand how to have a productive conversation with someone? How do you actually avoid arguments with people? So that's the last one. Is so many people assume negotiating is arguing, and I tell people that's not what I do for a living. I help people prevent arguments. I help people resolve arguments. So, there's the monetary component of it where you're just throwing money away by not doing it and costing yourself loads of retirement. There's the stress of now having to go along with what everybody else does and not advocating for yourself. And then there's also the stress reduction of making sure that you are advocating for yourself and you're creating those boundaries and you're preventing people from arguing with you. There's so many opportunities for you to improve your life.
So in the summary, correct me if I get wrong, the three main reasons would be first is because you're using negotiation in everyday life. If you're already using it, why not just become much more better in it? Second is you can get a better salary, or you can use your skills for better salary, and then you can have better personal relationships as well.
Yeah,
that would be the
absolutely.
That's lovely. Just now you just mentioned, and I was surprised, when I read your book, one of the study which you also mentioned now is that women are getting paid less for the same amount of work men are doing. And one of the main reasons is that because they don't negotiate or they don't participate in negotiation. First, my question is that why is that really? And second, what women can do to get the fair salary of what they deserve?
Yeah. So, one of the reasons truly is that women aren't negotiating as much, but I would say that statistic I gave you is out of date. So the number is increasing. So more and more women are negotiating for themselves. But for those who are still holding back, it's because of the repercussions that so many women have faced when they do try to negotiate. So studies show us, lots and lots of data over the years shows us that women are treated differently in negotiations. There is a lot of bias out there. That is the reason why the gender gap continues to exist. And for marginalized group, it's the same thing. Whether you're a woman, whether you're someone who doesn't fit into the dominant group profile, you are facing bias all the time. And because of that bias, people will treat you differently than they will that dominant group. Over in North America, that's primarily the white male. They're excused and they're expected to negotiate. And so we're okay with that. But when we see someone that doesn't fit that profile negotiating, we go, wait a second, you're greedy, you're bitchy, you're aggressive. It's all of these words that come up because of that societal bias that it's going to take 200 years for us to get rid of. So when women hear those stories, perhaps they were stories of the past, they go, I don't want to negotiate because I'm worried. I'm worried they're going to call me greedy. I'm worried they're going to rescind the offer. I'm worried I'm going to be labeled or put into a corner or be punished in some way for negotiating. So one of the reasons for that is they don't necessarily have all of the tools that I'm trying to provide people with, because a lot of the negotiation teaching that I've been exposed to historically, not all of it, but a lot of it is through one lens. It didn't come from someone who looked or sounded like me. And so I'm trying to make sure that whomever reaches, gets my information, whoever has my book in their hands, I use the analogy in the book and frequently of it's the on-ramp versus the stairs. The stairs work for the majority, for those able-bodied, for those privileged people, but there's people who can't use those stairs. When you have on-ramps everywhere, however, everybody can use the on-ramp. And so the difference is we've been faced with these, privileged stairs stuff all the time. All the books I read when I was coming up, when I was in school, when I was early in my career, I read some of them and I went, yeah, 80% of that works for me, but 20% I go, no. People would laugh me out of the room if I said that coming out of my mouth. And now I have loads of anecdotal experience to back that up. And I have loads of scientific data that backs that up. So that's what is holding so many people back from doing it when they're in those marginalized groups. So for women, I would say, thanks to so much of the societal movement that we're seeing, that number is increasing of the women who are negotiating. We have some room to go. And it's because we want to give them the appropriate skills to remove the fear of negotiating. And society has to play catch up too.
Yeah, no, I understand. And what would you say, like, what were some of those 20% of things that you read in book and said to yourself, like, no, these are things holding myself and working against me? Could you like share some of those?
Yeah, so there's some stuff like, when I was first starting out, and I tell this story in the book as well, when I was first starting out in my consulting career, and I was taught to do sales, business development and things like that, I was given the advice to be arrogant, go in there being a little bit more arrogant than everybody. And I was like, that might work for a guy like you who is wearing a suit and who's over 6 feet tall and who has white skin and who has gray hair. Yeah. That doesn't work coming from me. A woman coming in and being arrogant will be punished for that for life. So it's some of those types of tips that just weren't working. Going in and being aggressive, going in, all of those types of things don't work. And I tell people all the time, I am quite firm, but I'm never rude. Those things work only for a certain demographic and only for a very limited context. Even some of the tips from, hostage situations. You can't treat everyone like a hostage taker because that's not realistic. And that is not someone would listen to when you come in a form that looks like me. That's some of the things that come out there. You can't always go in being demanding. You can be firm without being demanding and without being and still be credible. So those are some of the things that come kind of off the top of my head.
I want to ask, what women can do now to make men listen to them? If there are things they are working against you, maybe there's something they can do, and maybe there are some things they have to get the advantages of.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things. One is finding advocates and allies. So I always find someone else in the room who can also speak up for you. Find someone else who can champion you, someone who looks more like them, because that will remove the bias and will help with. They're going to hear it from someone more receptive, or they're going to hear someone else back you up. You're not just one voice in a sea of voices against you. So that, in terms of the context and how you set yourself up in an environment for success, find other allies who will also echo some of the things, who will stand up for you, who will, when you are interrupted, someone can go, actually, I'm curious to hear what else Fotini has to say before you jump in. Find those people, because that's going to make your life easier. Now, those people aren't always available. So the other thing is, in terms of your own skill set, there's two things that come to mind immediately. First is walk in like you own the room. Behave as if you deserve to be there. Behave as if you have already earned whatever it is you're asking for. Odds are you do deserve to be there, and odds are you have earned it. So act the part, and that will send a message to the other party's subconscious that will start to affect how they respond to you without even saying a word. And the other thing, in terms of a communication tool, is I always advise women and marginalized folks, have lots of questions ready. Because if you are part of that group who is going to be labeled as greedy or aggressive or any of those derogatory labels that can often come along with the word negotiation, then by asking questions, you can still be credible, you can still be in control of the conversation, and yet you are still perceived as collaborative instead of overly assertive or overly aggressive. Questions can get you to the same destination without some of the resistance that you might get along the way. And it can actually allow you to be a bit more passive and go, okay, say less, get more. Like, that's the reason why I titled the book the way I did. Ask a question, get them to give you all the information you need to succeed.
Yes, and I especially agree on the second part, like ask questions, because I love asking questions, and I did that. I started doing that because I read that in last year in one of the books, like ask questions, get the expertise, get the ideas from others. But in the first reason you mentioned that enter the room because you deserve to be there, and I know like for many women and even for men, this is not an easy task. You know,
Yeah.
many would say like if I go to any event like where many of YouTubers are going there, and I also go there, I would in one end I know like I make YouTube videos, I interview people, like so I should be there. But on the other end, I would say no, like I'm very small YouTuber, I don't know, many people don't know me. So any field, you would always feel like anyone except you who are there is better than you. They are doing much better than you. They are getting much more revenue. They are getting much more traffic. So what advice you would give to them on how to prepare for that situation?
Yeah, for it starts with a mindset. So I want you to remember that if you were invited to something, you were invited for a reason.
Yes.
Someone noticed you, right? So it doesn't matter how big of an audience you have or how small, you caught someone's attention for a reason. You are valuable in someone else's eyes. And so when you walk in there, maybe you're not the most senior person in the room, maybe you're the most junior person in the room, but they went, hey, this person should be on our list for a reason. This person should be invited for a reason. And so if you don't reflect that back to them, then they're not going to treat you that way. So you need to own the fact that, hey, I deserve to be here. I might not have their experience yet, but boy, do I bring something else to the table. I bring potential. I bring energy. I bring enthusiasm. I bring an inquisitive nature. I bring a network. I bring something. Focus on what it is that you bring to the table instead of what it is that you are missing. Because too often it's that imposter syndrome that creeps in that goes, I don't deserve to be here. I'm not as good as these other people. When are they going to find? Here we go. So when you've been invited into a room, it's very easy for imposter syndrome to take over. It's very easy for your brain to start going, oh, when are they going to find out that I don't deserve to be here? Or I don't have as much as they do, or I don't have the experience that they do, or I haven't accomplished what all these people have. But this is the point where it's time to quiet your brain and focus on what you do have. This is basic psychology 101. If you don't believe it, why should they believe it? So when you start to focus on, hey, here's the reason why I was invited there. They noticed me for this. They noticed I did a great job. I've got curiosity. I've got experience in something else. I've got potential. I've got appetite for more. I've got a different perspective because I'm younger. I come from a different industry or whatever it is. The fact of the matter is they saw something and you have to see something in yourself as well. So it's almost like if you could take inventory of all the wonderful things that you do bring to the table, forget the stuff they have, focused on what you bring. And that will start to psych up your brain. It'll start to pump you up to start behaving differently too. You will physically look different when you start to think that way. And when you look a way that is in sync with, hey, yeah, I do deserve to be here, they're going to notice that as well. And they're going to be responding to you in a similar way. So they're kind of reacting to how you behave. If you behave like, I don't deserve to be here, then they're going to go, why is this person sitting there and taking up space? But if you act like, yeah, of course I deserve to be here, they're going to go, who's that person? And how will I take notice? So there's definitely things that you could be doing without even saying anything. But first it starts with the mental taking inventory of why you deserve to be here. Reframe it for yourself, and they're going to start to see it differently as well.
Yes, I love it. And especially like in one of your talk, you mentioned that always maintain a power pose, right? Like that's how you attack the others. So okay, I want to talk about more about the negotiation. When you are going with in a negotiation deal, and when you know like the other party has more power, more authority, and they can hold like they have more power to of the outcomes of that negotiation deal. Let's say like negotiation between employee and employer. So what are some of the things you would suggest someone like we can do for preparation in that kind of situation?
Look, there's always going to be power dynamics of some kind. And oftentimes, again, imposter syndrome kicks in and we assume that we have less power than we do. But when you start to analyze it, the power dynamics can change very dramatically. I mean, I wrote an entire section on my book about power, and we can see from what's been happening in society in the last year that the Great Resignation, or so it's called, thanks to, social upheaval and the economic state of things, has drastically changed the power dynamics between employees and employers. Now, all of a sudden, employers don't feel like they have any power because they're going, I'm losing people.
Yeah.
People are quitting, they're going for different jobs. What do I need to do to hang on to them? They feel quite powerless. But at the same time, you still have employees who are going, well, why would they hire me after all, over all of these people? Or, can I really ask for a promotion when, they might fire me or promote somebody else first? It's all in your head first. So when it comes to power, it's thinking it's reframing, is what do I bring to the table? Even with my MBA students, when they come to see me during office hours and they go, look, I got this job offer, but I'm scared of negotiating it. What if they rescind the offer? What if they go to the next 500 people on the list? And I said, but why did they make you number one on the list?
Yeah.
What are you bringing to the table? And if you handle it in such a way where it's going to be collaborative instead of this demanding, you must do this or else, then, you're just engaging in a conversation with someone. But the other thing about power is it's not just actual power that matters. And I talk about this quite a bit in the book, and I tease this apart. It's perceived power. So we just talked about body language, right? When you walk in the room, you got to look like you own the joint. They'll perceive, ooh, this is somebody interesting that I want to talk to. But that perception is just as important as what you actually bring into the room. They won't know anything about the experience until you open your mouth. But that perception is, this is someone interesting. This is somebody I'm going to want to get to know. So you need to behave in a way that tells them, yes, I am powerful. Yes, I am somebody that you want to get to know. Yes, I am someone that you need to treat credibly in this negotiation. So that perception matters. How you behave makes a difference in negotiations.
Wow, interesting. Like in the last part, so it's really important, like how you represent yourself, how you present yourself in others. Like, because many say like, I'm good at work, I'm good at doing work, but I'm not good at telling stories. So will that affect on their being a journey of become a successful? If you're not good at representing yourself powerful, or if you're not good at or telling good stories, will that affect in that journey?
Look, I mean, those who learn how to talk about themselves effectively and present themselves well will obviously it'll be a lot easier in life. But what you're saying, when you say I'm not good at something, you can get better at something. So that is a learned skill. It's not you're either born with it or you're not. So if you say I'm not good at telling stories, practice telling stories, have some stories ready. Think about which stories would be useful before you go into any type of negotiation, before you go into an interview of some kind. Have those stories ready. Think about, what do I bring to the table? How do I think I should communicate those? Is there a great story that would demonstrate that to these folks? And to take your time to work your way through it. But one of the biggest tips that I give people all the time is to practice. So practice telling those stories. Think about what it is you're going to say and how you're going to say it. And it's going to come across much more powerful as well when you've had a chance to think it through step by step. When you've gone, okay, that was too long. Maybe I'm going to make it more succinct, or that didn't necessarily present me in the light that I wanted it to, so I'm going to present it this way. Practice makes perfect. And the same rules apply when it comes to negotiation, when it comes to presenting yourself, when it comes to maximizing your power in that room.
I totally agree. Fotini, let's talk about international audience, like which is majority of my audience as well. So many of people like who wanna listen to you are international, coming from different parts of country, different parts of world, especially from South Asia. Like Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka.
Yep.
And I have talked with many of my friends, my colleagues, and even private messages on Instagram. This is very common. And when they say like, Harpreet, English is not our language, so we don't know how to have a proper conversation. We don't know how to raise it on, lower it on, take a pause, or deepen your voice. Even I started practicing these things like from last few weeks. But these are very like valuable questions they are asking. Please tell us how they can improve those skills and what should they do with these concerns.
So one of the ways to calm some of your concerns is to reframe it. When I went to Athens for the first time for business, I'd been there before for pleasure to visit family and all that stuff. So my parents are both from Greece. And the first time I went to Athens for work, it was a very different vocabulary than what I had to practice with my grandmother or my cousins and, going to a restaurant. Now being in a boardroom and having to use language and literally words that I wasn't used to having to say is a very different scenario than, just working your way through on a travel vacation or something like that. One of the things that I did when I got in front of the room, it was very intimidating for someone like me who I've been speaking Greek fluently all my life, but fluently with this many words. Now I needed this many words. Right? So it is daunting. When I walked in front of that group of people and I said, look, as you can tell from the way I speak, Greek is not my dominant language. It's one of 4 that I speak. If you prefer me to speak in my most fluent language, if that would be easier for you, I'd be happy to. But I suspect it's going to be a lot harder for you to understand me in English or French than it would be for you to understand me in Greek. If there's something that I'm saying that is causing an issue, by all means, let me know. That was me taking control of the situation and changing the power dynamics, because they could have looked at me and said, what, she can't even speak the way we speak? How powerful is she? But it was, oh, actually, this is not my first language. This is one of many. I'm doing you a favor by not speaking in my dominant language, right? So I took control of that moment. And what you get to do now is you also get to reframe it and go, hey, obviously English isn't my first language. I don't think that, my first language is going to be very helpful to you. So bear with me in this. If there's something that I am saying that may be confusing, by all means, feel free to ask me a question. You can address the elephant in the room and still own that moment when you reframe it. And I want you to remember too, the fact is most people you encounter, especially in North America, only speak one freaking language. You are speaking more than one. So you are already ahead of the game, and you need to make sure you believe that and they understand that too. That is a very powerful thing. So when you can reframe that and go, this is not a weakness, this is actually an advantage. This is something that very few people can do. Then you give them the ability to help communicate with you more effectively, to go, hey, if I've misunderstood something, or if I'm not being clear, by all means, let me know. It's not this awkward, misunderstanding that's going to continue down that path. So using that communication tool to go, hey, let's work out a system where just in case there is a misunderstanding, we have clarity the whole way through. That for you, the mindset first, and then the tool to be able, the confidence to be able to do that and say something like that is going to be critical to your success.
Yes, so too. And I also say the same things to them. Like listen, you are from India, you already know Hindi and then their native language, in my case, like Punjabi, and then you speaking English. So you are already smart, give some credits to you.
Absolutely.
But many of times the response would be if I'm having a English conversation with my work team, my superiors, and if I don't know that much of vocabulary, don't know that much of language, I might lose some credibility in my answers. So then they will say it's easy to say to you, for you, Harpreet. So what would you say to them? Is it real? If you don't know that much vocabulary for the answers, will you lose something in that conversation?
I personally don't think so. If you can compensate with something else, if you can compensate with, hey, I've already come this far with English. Imagine how much further I'm going to be in X number of months in this role. I get today, it might sound a little bit rocky, but this is just the beginning. This isn't the end of my, my language skills or something like that. The other thing is if you go, hey, I bring to the table so much international experience and so much vision and so much exposure that these fluent English speakers don't bring to the table, there are definitely ways to outweigh the things that you feel that are lacking. But in terms of that credibility, you create your own credibility by framing it from the very beginning. So by saying, look, my English right now is more limited, obviously, than my Punjabi or something like that. I am working on improving it. So I'm not concerned about it becoming an issue in the workforce or something like that. I know it's going to continue to improve because I'm just getting started. So you can already put that concern for them to bed as well. If during this interview, I'm struggling with, how to communicate, I might take a moment to look that up on my phone. It's almost like you're creating the roadway to be able to do whatever you want in that meeting and making it look credible and making them go along with it, because they'd be silly not to when you bring all of this international experience and exposure and skill set and all of that stuff that they don't have. Right? You're eliminating all their excuses to discount you by saying, I can compensate with a Google Translate if I need to. I can compensate by telling you I'm going to learn even more than that. I don't think that the language factor needs to be something that holds you back. I understand that's easier said than done, but get over the mental hurdle of it and then develop some of those ways to advocate for yourself in that moment at the very beginning of that interaction. And that stuff will go away.
Yes. And it again comes to that as well. Like, if you are already there talking with that person, you deserve to be there. They were already expecting you to be there. So take some credit for that as well.
Yeah. And if you've gone that far, you've gone that far because you have enough communication skills. Maybe you're better at communicating via email because you have the time to do the translating and all that kind of stuff. And so you can show them, like, you know, the fact that we are here already shows you that I am still learning more, and maybe I can lean more on emails or whatever it is. So you've gotten to this place for a reason. So believe it.
Definitely. Yes. So when I was doing a little bit research on you, I was watching your videos, binge watching videos. So in one of your videos you mentioned is that, like, because the skills you have gathered till now have gained you like 20 years of early retirement. And that's on like very conservative side, because you're still doing amazing, and that 20 years gonna become 25 and much more than that. So please tell me, what were some of big changes happened in your life that caught your attention and you said to yourself, yes, this got me like an early retirement?
Yeah. So, I mean, that number comes from the study that I mentioned to you earlier, where, you know, that one first negotiation, that 7% negotiation that results in 8 years of retirement. And I started doing the math, and I negotiated my first job, my second job, my first promotion, my second promotion. And I started adding that up, and I went, that's nothing. And then I went, oh, I've also negotiated for how many houses and how many mortgages that I've bought and sold. And I've negotiated for every car, and I've negotiated for home theater systems. So all of those little sums of money add up over the course of time. But the other thing I've been thinking about more recently is I've also opened up my eyes to other opportunities. So I say that by going, okay, well, I used to work for a company called L'Oreal, a cosmetics company, and I used to work for a food company. And when somebody came to me with an opportunity, I'd listen to it. And that opportunity with it may carry a lot more wealth along with it. It's calculated risk. So I've always I'm not a risk taker. I'm actually quite risk averse, but I take calculated risks. So I'm going to listen, and I'm going to ask a lot more questions. So when I was working in manufacturing and a consulting firm approached me and said, we think you'd really be good at what we do, I was like, okay, well, tell me more. And so I asked a lot of questions, and I thought about, what if this goes really badly? What if it doesn't work out? Well, if it doesn't work out, I'm going to have a really fantastic skill set, and I'm going to have a fantastic network of people, because I'm going to have all these new clients that I'm going to be able to talk to. So what can go wrong? There's only a lot of stuff that can go right. So being open to those things too helped to advance me so much further. You know, I have a father who pushed me into business when I was a kid, whether I liked it or not. I was working in high school in a retail store, and I was selling leather coats. And my dad came after a year of doing that part-time after school and on weekends. My dad said, you know, you need to quit your job next month. And I said, why? And he said, because we're opening up our own leather and fur boutique. And I go, what do you know about fur and leather? We'd come from a background of owning restaurants my entire life. He goes, I know I have a smart kid. So we figured it out, and I taught him product knowledge, and we figured all that stuff out together, because I've also been I wouldn't say fortunate, but I've also been I've surrounded myself with people who push me. I've surrounded myself with people who influence me in terms of pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. When my father certainly pushed me outside of my comfort zone, but even when I was considering the consulting proposition, when I was approached by those consultants, I wasn't surrounded by people who went, are you crazy? Why would you do that? I was surrounded by people who went, that's really interesting. So I didn't think I was so nuts for pursuing it. So by going after those opportunities, by surrounding myself with other people who also push themselves, that also helps to increase my wealth right? It also helps to help me see and seize opportunities that I don't think I would have otherwise.
Yeah, and don't they say like you are someone who like the average of five people around you? So how
Yes.
may I ask like how you find those people like who tell you, Fotini, this is so interesting, rather than why are you doing this? How you find those kind of people?
I mean, I think for me, I don't give the energy to the people that go, why are you doing this?
Mm.
I mean, I would give the energy to someone who goes, I'm concerned for you. And here are some of my concerns about it. But someone who's just going to judge me, that's a whole, like, you're out, you're done. I don't need that energy in my life. And I just reduce that. So I've always been very good about eliminating some of that noise that's going to hold me back. But some of the, when you surround yourself with supportive people who go, why not? Why wouldn't you pursue that? I finished my undergrad and I went straight into an MBA program. I back then, and I believe the case is still today, you have to have 2 years of work experience before you apply for an MBA program. I didn't have that. I had before work experience because I had my own business before I even did my undergrad, but I didn't fulfill all the requirements. But I was surrounded by people who went, why wouldn't you just give it a shot anyway? I had a career counselor in my graduate program who said, I think you should apply.
Yeah.
So I surrounded myself with supportive people. So when I did apply and they went, you've got a really interesting background, let's talk. And I got into that program. So then all of a sudden I'm a 23-year-old surrounded by 30-year-olds who have already done such cool things. And I truly believe what you said. I do believe that you are the average of the people around you. So I was surrounding myself with really intelligent, cool people who I could learn from, who they felt could learn from me. Some of them even said to me when I finished the MBA program, they didn't realize how young I was. They're like, I never would have guessed that you didn't have X number of years of experience because the way you carry yourself, because the way you speak, because the way you absorb information. And that was obviously the goal. But it's because I surround myself with people and I go, I want their experience. I want to learn from that opportunity. So, think about the energy of the people that you are taking in and think about eliminating some of that bad energy as well.
Yes, I love it. And I really appreciate that. And I really totally agree on that as well. So one of my last questions, Fotini, for you is that I read your book. I really love it. I got the digital copy from my local library in Brampton. And there are so many ideas you're talking about. And even the title, Say Less, Get More, is an idea. Then idea of authority, power, let the time pressure work for you. What was the main idea you wanted to write this book? Like, may I ask, like, what was the main reason you really wanted to write this book? Like, was that just having a credibility or you wanted to share something to society?
Um, the easy answer is HarperCollins asked me to write it. they reached out and they went, we think you have a book in you. And I was like, okay. But the reason you carve out the time to do something like that, because it is a very time consuming exercise, is all these years I've had people asking me, can I sign up for your MBA class? Or can I sit in the back of the room when you're doing a corporate workshop? And I'm like, no, those are only for those audiences. Like, you're not allowed to come to an MBA class if you're not an MBA student. And I wanted to make my tools, my way of explaining things more accessible to people, because I'd always been pulled aside by folks every time I stepped into a room, whether it was at a corporate client down in the US or an auditorium in a school. It was, how did you get them to listen to you? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. They said, well, how did you get you, somebody who doesn't have gray hair, somebody who's not 6 feet tall, somebody, who looks very different from the people I usually see in these role model type of roles. How did you get them to listen to you? And I didn't know the answer, but then I started to dissect it. And then I started to think about it. I started to read a lot more about gender. I started to read a lot more about psychology. I started digging in deeper and I went, oh, this is why it works. And I wanted to share that. I have a formula that works for me. I have a mindset that works for me. And if I can give that to more people, that is what is going to advance my mission. And my mission is to empower people to achieve their goals. So if I give them something that's super easy to follow along and can get into as many hands as possible, then my mission is going to be complete. And so that's the reason to do it, is just, how do you help people change their lives? I mean, how rewarding is that? That is the most when I get an inbox message from somebody who says, hey, because I saw you speak, or I watched your Instagram video or your story, I managed to increase my promotion by $20,000, or I got out of an abusive relationship. Like, those are the types of life-changing messages that I get, and that fills me with so much joy. So to be able to spread this out and help that many more people, that's a pretty good reason to do it.
I love your way of thinking and your mission. Could you share more about these MBA courses and MBA students? I really want to know more about it.
So I often teach part-time at the Schulich School of Business. I've been taking a bit of a break since the pandemic started, but I would teach an average about one semester a year. And I would have all of these, I would share stuff. I would share on LinkedIn all the time. Hey, here's something that came up in class today, or here's an article I shared with my students, because I have been accumulating an audience for a long time. And I thought, hey, if it's interesting to them and it's interesting to me, it's going to be interesting to everybody else out there. And so that's when people started going, can I come and audit a class? Can I sign up for your class? But there was always a wait list for my class. And if you're not a Schulich student, you can't sign up for that class because it is so limited in terms of space. And when I work with corporate clients, they actually bring me in to train their sales teams or their procurement teams or their supply chain teams or their marketing teams. And we sit in either a real boardroom that has, 10 seats in it, or we do a lot of virtual work where I am training in a virtual classroom. But I can't just let anybody into that room because I want them to feel vulnerable and safe to talk about their negotiations. Yeah. So I didn't have an offering for everybody else besides, I started doing the LinkedIn stuff a long time ago. I started just Instagram in the last couple of years to try and find ways to get messages out to people and help as many people as I can. I've been doing a lot of nonprofit stuff as well. So, speaking on campuses, especially when it comes to marginalized groups and talking to them about salary negotiations. When I can find the time, I squeeze it in, but my time is limited. The number of hours I have in a day is limited. So the book was the easiest way to go, okay, what is it that I do for corporate clients? How do I make that accessible to everybody? How do I make it in language that doesn't feel exclusive, that makes everybody go, oh, that works for me too, because I'm not that corporate person, or I'm not that specific person. I wanted everybody to feel like they had a tool that they could get their hands on to help them.
Yeah, and one of the main reasons I also love your book is that you also provided a digital copy. Like, many of books don't have digital copy, and I love it. Okay, the last question. You are very inspiration to many women. Like, I was looking at the comments, and you won't believe, I was looking at the comments of YouTube videos, like when you were guests in the media shows, in the news channels, or doing guest podcast interviews. And then I started looking at the comments on your Instagram posts. Like, you are such an inspiration of so many women, and they love you, they listen to you. And one of the main reasons, I think, because you are giving them a doable solutions, doable things they can do for make their career life much more better, even a daily life much more better. I love it. I really get the idea of it. My last question is, and this is for women, what your advice would be for international young women students, like these young students from international, on how, like, they coming to Canada, they're coming for study, make their life better, how they can make their life much more better and get a successful career here in Canada.
So one of the things that we know about women and their careers is that women succeed when they're supported by other women. And yes. When you surround yourself with others who will be supportive of you, who will talk about you in a room that you are not in, that is what is one of the most helpful drivers for women in their career paths. And I will say, whether you're new to Canada or you've been here a long time, there are so many resources out there. There are so many people out there who want to help. So whether you're in a university environment, look for those groups on campus where you can find those peers who want to help. Look for those resources for folks who are new to Canada or the US or wherever you are going. Those exist out there. I know they exist because I've had people reach out to me and to tell me that they exist. I wish I remember the names of all of them, but I am very fortunate to attract a lot of folks who are also equally supportive and who have started their own organizations for such things. A quick Google search would do it. Look at somebody that you follow online that you admire and go, who else are they affiliated with? Who else is commenting on their stuff? Who else is being promoted by them? There are so many organizations and so many role models out there, other speakers like me, other authors and stuff, who are shining a light on those groups. Join them. Doesn't matter if you don't have a friend to join with you. You will find yourself with an entire group of people who want to take you in and who want to work with you. There's Lean In, there's W North, there's Dovetail, there's so many of them just off the top of my head that I can think of, but there's so many women's organizations out there. The Network of Executive Women is another one I should have thought of because I'm a regional advisor for them. I'm on their board. There's all of these folks who go, join us. We want to talk about it. We want to support one another. And there's power in numbers. There's power in that support network. So find a network to join so that you can be more social with them, so that you can learn skills with them. For me, it started when I was in my undergrad and when I was in my MBA program, and I found, the women in business and the women in management and all that kind of stuff. So there are those resources out there. Toastmasters is another really great one. If you're an international student and you want to practice your speaking skills, Toastmasters is a great place to do that as well. So look for those opportunities. If you have your eyes open, they'll pop up really easily. When you follow someone like me, when something interesting comes along, I share it. There's other people who do the same thing. So, look to where they're pointing you instead of just ignoring some of those signals.
Yes, there are so many resources, and one of many resources that I personally prefer, like I joined Toastmasters. I joined Toastmasters like for 8 to 10 months, and it really helped me in improving my English, getting the hold of conversation. And recently I started looking for like more groups who are doing the same work on Meetup app or Eventbrite. You can find people like who with the same interests. So really,
those are great resources. Like all you have to do is scour Eventbrite and you'll find stuff. There's also a cultural group for everyone. Like I've spoken at a bunch of different cultural ones, like Tamil Women Rising is another one that comes to mind. So there's always a group of people who have a similar interest to you. Seek them out, join them, talk to them, and see where else they point you to. Like just today, I got another email from someone who went, hey, we met through this thing. I met some really cool women through this other organization. Would you be interested in an introduction? I was like, yeah, I'm always interested to meeting really cool, accomplished people. So, ask other folks, what other groups should I be looking at? There's so many resources out there. It's just a matter of putting yourself out there, which is uncomfortable at first, but the rewards are there.
Yes, so true. And again, like Fotini, thank you so much for giving your time today. I love our talk. Could you please tell us, the listeners, how they can find you on internet and how they can connect with you?
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That is a very easy one. On Instagram, it's at Fotini Icon. I've made it easy to find me. I've chopped off the last name. And I'm just launching an online course as well that you can find at saylessgetmore.com. And of course, the book is available pretty much everywhere books are sold, including the library, on digital, and even on audiobook as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Again, thank you so much, Fotini. Thank you so much for coming to the show, and thank you so much for giving your time today.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for shining a light on all of these skills for your audience.
Yes.